Hi lovely people, welcome to Zopplady, welcome to my channel once again. You know, in the previous video, my boss Kweku said a lot, and I said I'm not going to stop at this interview. There should be a part 2. So today's interview is about what? A part 2. He mentioned in his self-introduction that he's a pastor and he's also a component manager. And this is something that I want him to clarify. How he juggles between being a pastor and then being... Are you a full-time pastor, by the way?
No, I'm not a full-time pastor.
You are a part-time pastor.
Exactly.
And then, okay, so then my first question will be, why not a full-time pastor, but a part-time pastor?
All right. So, once again, I'm happy to be back. I was so excited about the last interview, and I'm so excited about today's interview as well. Good question. Why not a full-time pastor? I think that there are too many pastors in the house of God, in the church. We need more pastors outside the church. And when you look throughout the Bible, right, we had a number of prophets who were not just operating in the temple, but were also operating in the palace. So we have prophets who were ministering to kings, who were juggling between temple and palace, giving advice. So I think that we need more pastors in the marketplace, in their workplaces. And while some are doing full-time work in the church, some will also be ministering in the marketplace, and that's the kind of pastor I am. Okay.
So what is your opinion about the current crop of pastors that we have? Since you're a pastor yourself, how do you see yourself as a pastor? And how do you think society also perceive you as a pastor?
All right, so I think it's interesting. I want to be seen as a pastor who, whether you know I'm a pastor or not, we should still be able to flow, right? I don't like this issue about you didn't know I was a pastor, then you know I'm a pastor, then all of a sudden attitudes start changing. But for me, I believe that whatever the case, right, we should still be able to flow. I had a colleague at work. She is a Muslim, right? She was with us for 1 year, and we were once traveling in the car, and she was talking about something, and I gave her some advice on it. Then she was like, oh, the way you gave me the advice, you are talking like a pastor. So another colleague was like, but he is a pastor. And she was like, oh, I've been around for 1 year. I never knew he was a pastor. And I was like, how am I supposed to just like, oh, she thought that during the lunchtime when we are eating, I'll be quoting Bible scriptures and things like that. I said, no, you don't need to be quoting Bible scriptures to, I mean, you had a problem and I gave you some advice on that, and you said that I was talking like a pastor, right? So I think people perceive pastors, one, to be in the church, to be kind of always quoting Bible scriptures and stuff like that, but that's not the way it should be. It should be a pastor who will make an impact in people's life, and that's how I want to be seen.
Yeah, okay, so making an impact in people's life. What type of impact are you making in people's life?
Yeah. So I have so many friends who come to me with so many problems here and there, and sometimes just a little word of encouragement, right? Seeing things from a different perspective. The other day, a friend was telling me about so many problems she was going through, and after listening to him for about an hour, I asked him one question: have you prayed about it? And he was surprised, because he was like, this thing I'm going through, I don't see, I had never thought about praying about it. It sounded too, it was a relationship problem. And he didn't see why he should bother God with relationship problems. And after that, according to him, he prayed about it. 2 weeks later, he got back to me and said that things have changed, right? So he thanks me for asking him that critical question: have you prayed about it, right? So those little advice, those little encouragement, I believe, has really helped people move from a negative mindset to a positive mindset.
Okay. So now, do you go around, of course I know you don't go around telling people, yeah, I'm a pastor, but why do you choose that mode of operation? Because most pastors go like, don't you know I'm a pastor? Why do you choose that mode of operation as a pastor in your workplace?
Because I was not born a pastor. I was born a human being.
Oh, really?
So let me say how I became a pastor and I'll answer that question. Okay. It was 2012, 7th October, a Sunday, and I had just come to church. And I think previously I mentioned that my dad is a pastor of Evangel Church International. And he called 2 of us during the service, and he asked us to kneel down, and he said that God has spoken to him that we should be ordained as pastors. So that's when he prayed for us on the 7th of October 2012. So that's how we were called into the pastoral ministry. So over the years, right, I have come to the conclusion that you need to be who you are, right? Still a pastor. You don't have to lord it over people because you were a pastor. You don't have to shout it to the whole world because you're a pastor. I believe that actions speak louder than words, right? So just be you, and at a point in time, people will get to know one way or the other, whether through your actions or through somebody else telling them.
Yeah. Quickly, you just touch on some sensitive topic that had always been bothering me about pastors who own their own church.
Okay.
So let me seek that clarification before I pose my question. Your father's church, does it belong to him, or he is just a pastor in that church?
So he was the first general overseer of Obeng Church International for a number of years. And in 2019, when he turned 70 years, he started putting a succession plan out there, and he felt that so many pastors are general overseers and they don't want to hand it over. So he purposed in his heart that 70 years he's going to hand it over. So at the age of 70 in 2019, there was elections and a new general overseer was elected, and he became the chairman of the council, the highest decision making body of the church. So he sees himself not as the owner, he's just the first general overseer. He says that God is the one who owns the church. We are just mortal men who do the biddings of God.
Okay, so now this is my critical question. Yes. So you said you were in church when you were explaining how you became a pastor.
Yeah.
Did your father inform you that he was going to mention you at church to become a pastor? And were you forced into it just because you want to please your father and you accepted that role?
So let me answer from the back first. I always knew that at a point in time I will have to accept the calling of God.
Okay.
To be a pastor, normally you already know already at a point in time through dreams, through prophetic words and the rest. It's just a question of when. So I knew that already right from childhood. The when came on the 7th of October, so it was just a confirmation. He did not discuss it with me that he was going to do that. It was during the church service that he told I and the other person who's not the general overseer of the Church International that something's going to happen to this service, just get ready. And then he just called us to the front. But the most important thing is after that, you should also have the convention you yourself. And that came, later, whereby it's not just God talking to he, but it being confirmed to us as well.
Okay. Yeah. So don't you think, since your father, by what you've been saying, visionary leader, and he was trying to make that succession plan that I don't want my church to go to somebody else, so let me try to smuggle my son in to have that helicopter look over the church activities. Did that thought cross your mind? If it did, how did you disabuse that thought?
Okay, so I think it's very possible for overseers to have that kind of plan for their children to take over, and in that case, no matter what, the children are pushed, right? But for me, it was a natural thing. I was already a leader in the church. In fact, at the time I was made the pastor, I was the coordinator for the youth. Okay. So I was already working in the church. Okay. I have occupied so many positions in the church. So I was the youth coordinator at the time. Then I became a pastor. I became the youth pastor, much later. But I don't think that is the case to hand it over to me, because I'm actually not the general overseer of Evangel Church now. There's somebody who's the general overseer. I'm the assistant general secretary of Evangel Church International. So if that was a plan, then he would have pushed right from the beginning. But it was an open, transparent thing. He had to propose a name of somebody to be general overseer, which he did, and then the church council voted on it. Yeah. So and for him, he's not the type who will be pushing his children to do what they don't want to do or things like that. He knew that I was a leader in the church anyway, and it was purely by merit. And the most important thing is whether you heard from God or not, right? At the end of the day, even if God says that let your child be the pastor, once God has said that, so shall it be. So
Kweku, as you are explaining further, then more questions are coming. Okay, now you said before you became the pastor, you were holding various positions. Now I realize that in most churches, I have not done necessarily, but then from hindsight, most pastors' children are given position These positions that are given to them, is it based on merit or just because that person is the pastor's son? So in your analysis, how do you see yourself? Did you see that position was given to you based on your merit, or you thought, because I'm the pastor's son, I have to occupy this position?
So on the contrary, there are not many churches where the pastor's children are following after their father's footsteps, because we have so many statistics of pastors' children who go wayward, so they don't even get to the point of being given positions at all. Yes, we have very good examples of churches where their children have taken over, but most of them is rather the opposite. So the few who have taken over, yes, I mean, I don't know the reasons why they were given those positions, but in my case, it's something that I volunteered myself to be in the youth movement. I volunteered myself to be the youth coordinator and other responsibilities as well. For me, I think leadership comes naturally for me. So it was much easier being a leader at the youth level and then playing other roles as well. So I think it's just the personality which I am. Don't forget that I'm not the only child of my parents. My parents have 3 other children, but none of them have been made a pastor in Evangel International.
So I asked this critical question because I know Kweku over the years, and if I'm not mistaken, from 2008, so we are talking about
2009.
2009. Okay, so 2009. So we're talking about 13 years now. Yes. And he's an excellent leader. He's able, when you give him job, he delivers. And I'm wondering how you're good at your work and still juggle between being a pastor. How do you manage your time to do everything to perfection, close to perfection?
So I think the Bible says that give unto God what is God, give unto Caesar what is Caesar. So it's a matter of setting your priorities. When it's time for work, it's time for work. When it's time to do God's work, it's time to do God's work, right? So, I'm not the type who uses work time to do church things, right? So you will not see me in a work environment preaching, because that is the time to do the corporate work kind of stuff, right? After the 8 hours of corporate work, it's where in the evenings maybe we have a midweek service, or on Sundays, on Saturdays we have church service, or we have to visit members, and that is the time for that. So it's a matter of clearly defining what to do what at every point in time and not mixing the two up.
Good. So I'd like to share a personal encounter with Kweku, and today I'm going to give him the opportunity to explain to me why he did that to me.
Sure. I'll be happy to do that.
So when I entered the project in which he was as a leader, he was my immediate supervisor. We were working with the Public Accounts Committee in Ghana. So we had a conference, a retreat we call it. So the first time I was to go with him, so he did a presentation in front of all these MPs. Then the following quarter, I thought we were going to go together. Then I think 3 days to the time, Kweku said, "No, Genevieve, I'm not going with you. You are going alone, and you're going to do everything I did on that day." Kweku, why did you do that as your new subordinate?
Sure. I think there's this bird, the eagle. It's supposed to be one of the leaders of the birds in the bird kingdom. And it's interesting how they teach their young ones how to fly. It's said that they will put the young ones in their beak, fly high, and then leave it and let the bird try to fly on its own. And then if it's going to crash on the ground, it'll try and fly and pick it up and fly it back again. Repeat it over and over again. So it teaches the bird, its younger, how to fly by flying. And I think that's the best way. Experience is the best teacher, right? And I believe in that. And you see, sometimes you have to look at the person you are giving the responsibility to. And in hindsight, I realized that based on who you are, right, you're able to handle such a tough situation. It's not everybody. There are some you have to gradually, push a person to take up certain responsibility. But because of who you were, I realized that we don't have to spend too much time mentoring you or being there with you to show you how to do. Once is enough. After that, you're on your own. If you mess up, you learn from it. If you don't mess up, fine. And you didn't mess up.
And on this same platform, I would like to say a big thank you to Kweku for that single act.
Wow.
Because that boost.
You know, I didn't remember. I don't remember.
That boost my confidence.
Sure.
And that gave me that zeal to do them all. And I told myself, for him to have given me that thing, I can't fail.
So how did you go when you went?
I think it went well. They were surprised to see this tiny girl because I was much tinier than I am. And then when I finished, they were surprised and they were clapping for me. I was like, yes.
Wow.
So Kweku,
the honorable hand clap.
the honorable hand clap. So Kweku has been my mentor and I appreciate it. And anytime I'm doing anything, for you to see me how I am today, Kweku played a role.
Wow.
And that's why I wanted to have him on my channel, so that I will teach my kids, so that they will look at what Kweku has been doing, so that you can also impact, because you might not be close to us. So that I'll just say, go onto my channel, click on this interview, so that they learn something. Kweku, thank you so much.
Always
and on that note, I'd like to ask you again to advise the public about anything at all you deem fit.
Yeah. I just want to advise on the fact that sometimes if you don't know something, it's better to ask. And we crawl into ourselves that and assuming that this is the way things are or things should be, right? But just take a step of faith, right? And then be bold about doing things, be intentional about doing things. If you fail the first time, try again. At the end of the day, you will succeed. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Yes. So on that note, Zopplady would like to say a big thank you for watching. As usual, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a family about who? Zopplady. Bye bye. Oh, Kweku, I love this.